In a certain sense, perhaps it is the best of times. Yes, we're about to finally do our job. We're about to actually reopen the government, put our workforce back to work. And by a whisker, we're avoiding default and the financial calamity that would ensue if we continued down that path. But it's also the worst of times in that once again we took this conversation to the 11th hour. I'd like to have somebody come down and explain what all this was for in terms of the hurt that it took in their personal finances. I'd like some of the folks who advocated these tactics to come down and explain to a restaurant owner down in Hampton, Virginia, where the workforce at NASA Langley, 3,500 strong, was reduced through this furlough to 7 people. The lost receipts from that restaurant over the last 2 weeks, how their tactics somehow improved the fortunes of that private sector business. I'd like those who advocated that this was smart politics to shut down the government and take us to the verge of default, explain to the motel owner, the Skyline Drive in Virginia, who lost a couple weekends of the peak fall foliage season and won't see any of those dollars come back, how this was in their best interest, this shutdown. My hope and prayer is that we will not do any more damage, that we'll put a halt to this hemorrhaging of $20 billion that we've already inflicted on our economy, that we'll say to that motel owner, we're not going to be willing to shut down a national park again comes January. We'll say to that restaurant worker that's outside a federal facility, hey, you're going to be able to predict that the federal government isn't going to be laid off willy-nilly. That we'll say to our federal workforce, we're going to ask you to do more with less, but we're going to support you in a way that we haven't done to date. That we'll say to the American taxpayer that we're not going to deepen the deficit by taking irrational actions like shutting down the government. And that we'll say to the world that once again, you can count on the United States of America to pay its bills in an orderly and regular fashion, and never again we put the full faith and credit of the United States of America in jeopardy.